Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miuch and you are watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. 3 days of unrest in Los Angeles. Donald Trump deploys the National Guard. The UN Ocean Conference opens in France. Aims to get more countries to ratify an ocean biodiversity treaty. Kazakhstan's and Bulgaria's presidents sign a memorandum to jointly develop the Middle Corridor. Thank you for tuning in. The protests against federal immigration raids in Los Angeles have reportedly calmed throughout the night, following 3 days of unrest, resulting in dozens of arrests and injuries. As the protests broke out over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump deployed National Guard troops in the city against the wishes of California's governor.
Tensions in Los Angeles escalated on Sunday as thousands of protesters took to the streets in response to President Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard. The move blocked off a major freeway and saw self-driving cars on fire as law enforcement used tear gas, rubber bullets and flashbangs to control the crowd. The demonstrations come after the president pledged to deport record numbers of people living in the USA illegally and tighten security along the US-Mexico border. His administration set a goal for US immigration and customs enforcement agents to arrest at least 3,000 migrants each day. However, the enforcement sweep has also affected some people legally residing in the country, including permanent residents, sparking legal challenges and further fueling protests.
I think that's honestly what's heartbreaking the most, because they're making it seem like they're really bad people, like criminals, and when they're not, when they're just trying to work hard for their own families.
I feel sad about how they treat our Latino people from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Latino people from Mexico, Central and South America. I'm not happy about what's happening. These illegal raids are taking hard-working people. It's not fair, it's not right, it's not right, it's not right. We came to work.
Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the National Guard deployment as unlawful. Meanwhile, President Trump defended the move, calling the protests radical left riots and threatened strong law enforcement action.
Be watching it very closely, and when they spit at people, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum criticized the U.S. government over the immigration raids and deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles during a public event.
Recuperar sus derechos establecidos en la Constitución.
We do not agree with this way of addressing the immigration issue. The phenomenon will not be addressed with raids or violence. It will be by sitting down and working on comprehensive reform that takes into account all Mexicans on the other side of the border. That is our position, and we always call for peace, for non-violence, not to intensify any violent form of protest, none.
Legal experts warn that deploying military forces against civilians risks infringing on constitutional rights and upsetting the balance of federal and state powers. The protests continue near Los Angeles City Hall as the city remains deeply divided over immigration and law enforcement tactics.
Following 3 days of unrest at the anti-ICE protests in LA, to talk on the situation on the ground, we're joined by John Kavalik, senior editor at The Issue Insight, coming to us from New York. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the National Guard was deployed by Donald Trump on Saturday against the wishes of California's Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom is now announcing legal action. Dozens were arrested and injured in the clashes over the weekend. What is the general sense in the country on where things stand right now and on the deployment of the National Guard without a request of state officials?
It's unsettling, but your piece teed up. You have the gentleman saying that all these people want to do is work, and they're not criminals. And then you had President Sheinbaum of Mexico saying that we need to sit down and discuss a way to protect Mexicans in the U.S. That is so opposed to how President Trump looks at this, because President Trump looks at anyone who's here and they're not here on the visa they're supposed to have or with the documents, that they're criminals and that they need to leave. And so that abuts to the sense of right and wrong people have, the sense of decency, the sense of wanting to take actions that are required by law, but doing them in a way that is somewhat gentler. President Trump won the election in 2024, about 51% of the vote. And it's those people he's focusing on, not on the people that didn't elect him. And he looks at California and he sees a state that is generally Democratic and has a Democratic governor, Gavin Newsom, who President Trump has a love-hate relationship with, the former Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, from California as well. And so he looks at California and he just says, everything you do is bad, and I'm going to be Mr. Tough Guy. And that's what he's doing.
The mayor of LA and California's lieutenant governor have called on people not to engage in violence so as to not give the Trump administration, quote, what it wants. Do you think these calls might pacify the situation?
Yeah, the challenge for the political leaders is looking back to the Black Lives Matter protests throughout the United States. And you do have, in every country, there are people who will come out to a demonstration for reasons that aren't entirely aligned with what the majority are protesting. Some people are professional protesters or they're amateur protesters. Some just don't like the US government, and if they see a protest that is anti-Trump, anti-US government, anti-US military, then they're likely to join. And they tend to be more violent because they want to stir up a response that is formidable. They want Trump to send in the Marines from Camp Pendleton. They want the ICE officers and the National Guard officers to use live bullets and to kill people, because that then helps them with their issue. And so that's what we have. We have all of this going on, and it's it's just ugly, and it's likely to continue to be ugly for some time.
Well, as you've mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, Donald Trump did campaign on this specific issue. He vowed in crackdown on illegal immigration. This month, the White House increased the goal for ICE officials to arrest at least 3,000 people a day. Do you believe that an increase in raids might provoke further protests, not just in Los Angeles?
It probably will. One of the challenges for the Department of Homeland Security and for the ICE agents is generally they don't wear any identification. Sometimes they don't even wear patches saying they're ICE. And so what we're seeing on television are these focuses where these SUVs will drive up. Out will get these heavily armed people wearing masks, not providing IDs, refusing to say who they are, just we're federal agents, and then hauling people away. And that's scaring the hell out of people, because they look at how countries in the Americas during some of its worst, some countries in Europe, Africa, Asia, and they look at some of the dictatorships and the authoritarian governments and how people would disappear. So I expect we're going to continue to see more activity and more protests. And the other is important to note is that the more protests there are against what the Trump administration is doing, the more the Trump administration is energized by it. because President Trump likes to hear his team call that this is an insurrection, this is rebellion, this needs to be put down, all those tough terms. And so he's going to be energized by this. The Congress is going to sort of be divided on it. But in the end, he's simply going to say, all we're doing is trying to find people who shouldn't be here and remove them. So they are criminals. You can say they're baby criminals, they're criminals light, not heavy, they're not drug dealers, but in his mind, they're still criminals, they have to go. So I think we're going to continue to see this basically play out all summer.
John, thank you so much for being here with us and providing insight.
Thank you.
Still in the U.S., Donald Trump's ban on travel to the U.S. for citizens of 12 countries came into effect. Trump signed the sweeping new travel ban last week, blocking nearly all immigration from a dozen of countries, most of them in Africa and the Middle East. The order also imposed stricter visa requirements for nationals from 7 other countries. The Trump administration says the move is aimed at strengthening border security and preventing visa overstays, while critics say the ban is discriminatory and politically motivated. Top U.S. and Chinese trade officials are meeting in London for talks on ending the trade war between the countries. The talks follow a phone call between the two presidents and aim to build on the 90-day tariff truce previously agreed upon in Geneva. Our Mahnur Magdoum has the details in Beijing.
High-level trade talks between China and the USA are taking place in London today, following the recent phone call between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. Both countries are trying to ease the trade tensions and build on the 90-day tariff truce that was agreed to in Geneva last month. Leading the talks are U.S. Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary, and U.S. Trade Representative, along with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. The main issues on the table include U.S.-imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, China's restrictions on rare earth mineral exports, restrictions on advanced semiconductor sales, as well as U.S. restrictions on student visas for Chinese students studying in the U.S. The meeting comes as China's economy started showing signs of stress. Its exports to the U.S. fell to 34% in May, and prices at home are falling. These signals add to the urgency for China to find common ground and ease some of the economic pressure. Overall, the London talks are seen as a critical test. Both sides are under pressure to show progress, especially in areas such as trade, technology, and student mobility. Clear outcomes are uncertain, but these talks reflect that dialogue is continuing even as deeper strategic divisions remain. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing, China.
Russia has launched its largest drone attack since the war began, according to Ukraine's Air Force. The latest overnight wave of aerial strikes comes amid Russia's renewed ground offensive on Ukraine's east and northeast.
A record-breaking drone assault rocked Ukraine overnight, with the country's air force reporting 479 drones launched by Russia, the largest single-night barrage since the full-scale attack began in 2022. Alongside the drones, 20 missiles of various types were fired, targeting primarily central and western regions of Ukraine. In a statement Monday, Ukraine's Air Force said 277 drones and 19 missiles were successfully intercepted. However, 10 managed to hit targets, injuring at least one person. These figures could not be independently verified. The attack comes amid a renewed Russian ground offensive along Ukraine's eastern and northeastern front lines, a stretch of more than 1,000 kilometers. In a late-night address, President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged that in several sectors, the situation is very difficult. As Kyiv struggles with ammunition shortages and stretched forces, uncertainty over continued Western aid, especially from the US, has added pressure on Ukraine's defenses. Meanwhile, 2 rounds of direct peace talks in Istanbul between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators have so far failed to produce breakthroughs, apart from prisoner exchanges and repatriation of the dead and wounded. Ukraine is also hitting back. The country has developed long-range drones capable of penetrating deep into Russian territory. On Monday, Russia's defense ministry said 49 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over 7 different regions. 2 managed to strike a plant producing electronic warfare systems in Chuvashia, more than 600 kilometers east of Moscow. In the Voronezh region, 25 drones were reportedly shot down. 1 strike caused a gas pipeline fire, according to local officials.
As the fighting in eastern Ukraine rages on, police forces are evacuating civilians, among them the elderly and children.
In Ukraine, danger looks and sounds like this. In eastern Ukraine, a police evacuation vehicle moves through the battered streets of Kostyantynivka as a drone detector picks up a threat overhead.
The situation in Kostyantynivka is very tense. It gets worse every day.
Amid the chaos, a fragile moment of protection. 4-year-old Milana is gently secured into body armor by police before the journey to safety.
I'm worried for my child. She needs to develop, go to kindergarten, learn and play with other children. We need to start a new life. She has to live her life and develop. She can't live her life sitting at home or in the yard.
They're among the lucky few who are safely moved into a quieter area in the Donetsk region, where Svetskova's older son awaits them. Elsewhere in the city, another life uprooted. Halnya is helped from her home with her cat by her side and the sound of shelling close behind. Her cat serves as a reminder of a life she now has to leave behind.
I found bombs in my garden. They destroyed so much. My bedding was hanging outside and then, boom, everything was tossed around.
One by one, civilians are being pulled from the fire. For now, they drive towards safety. But the war and its scars follow close behind.
Colombian senator and potential presidential candidate Miguel Uribe Turbay remains in critical condition following an assassination attempt in Bogota. Hundreds of people assembled in the capital in a show of public support as the investigation into the incident continues.
Hundreds of people marched through Colombia's capital, Bogota, in support of Senator Miguel Uribe Turbay after an attempted assassination. The demonstration went to the hospital where he is receiving medical treatment.
Estamos aquí orando por la vida y salud de Miguel Uribe.
We are here praying for the life and health of Miguel Uribe. May the Lord grant him strength and make him recover soon.
According to hospital officials, Uribe underwent surgical procedures on his head and left thigh and remains in intensive care. His condition is listed as critical. The incident occurred on Saturday in the capital during a public campaign event. Witnesses reported that 6 shots were fired, 2 of which struck Uribe. A suspect, identified as a minor under the age of 15, was taken into custody at the scene. The 39-year-old senator, affiliated with the right-wing Democratic Center Party, was conducting early campaigning activities ahead of Colombia's 2026 presidential election. He comes from a politically prominent family in Colombia. His grandfather served as president between 1978 and 1982. His mother, journalist Diana Turbay, was kidnapped in 1990 and killed in 1991 by an armed group under the command of the late cartel leader Pablo Escobar. The Colombian government has announced a reward equivalent to approximately $730,000 for information leading to further developments in the investigation. Authorities are examining whether additional individuals were involved or coordinated the attack. Colombian President Gustavo Petro has ordered a comprehensive investigation, including a review of existing security protocols.
Last night, Portugal staged a thrilling comeback to beat the holders Spain in a dramatic Nations League final in Munich, with victory sealed in a tense penalty shootout. Despite the celebrations, a fan fatally fell from the stands. The incident occurred during the first period of extra time. Coaches and players have since expressed their condolences.
Munich's Allianz Arena was buzzing with energy as Portugal and Spain battled it out in a nail-biting UEFA Nations League final. The score was 2-2 after extra time, but when it came to penalties, Portugal kept their cool and won with a 5-3 shootout win.
What a performance! It feels great to be Portuguese and see my national team beat the country where I'm living.
They're our brothers, but we don't like them. So it was fantastic to win that match. Fantastic. Why? Because it's always incredible to beat Spain.
Portugal head coach Roberto Martinez beamed with pride as his team lifted the trophy. He tipped his hat to Cristiano Ronaldo's veteran leadership, saying it was the secret sauce behind their steel-strong character on the big stage.
A captain with Cristiano Ronaldo's experience is essential to create the values we believe in. Showing personality. Going behind twice today against a great Spain team, but continuing because of the captain's influence.
In the post-match press conference, Spain's head coach Luis de la Fuente gave a shout-out to the talent on both teams.
When the match finished, we had a moment to exchange some words with the opponents. And they all said to me, they all agreed this is the best national team they've ever faced. So what could we have done better, or what could we have changed? I don't think anything from the initial game plan because I think we managed things well.
Spanish fans had the trophy almost in their hands after taking the lead, but in the end, the shiny prize slipped through their fingers.
I am Spanish and I love Spain so much. They played really well, but that's football. You can't always win.
And with the trophy now just a short trip from the Spanish border, Portugal's neighbours will have to wait until they get a chance to snatch it back.
At the UN Ocean Conference in France, world leaders were urged to ratify a treaty to protect international waters. The Biodiversity Pact needs 60 countries to ratify it to take effect. So far, 50 have signed on.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres opened the Ocean Conference in Nice with a stark warning that human activity is pushing the world's oceans into crisis. He urged countries to ratify the High Seas Treaty, which would allow marine parks in international waters, only 1% of which is currently protected. Illegal fishing, rising sea temperatures and plastic pollution are accelerating the collapse of marine ecosystems, Guterres said, threatening both biodiversity and human livelihoods. While 50 countries have ratified the treaty and 15 more pledged to do so, it needs 60 to take effect. The United States has not ratified the agreement and sent no high-level delegation, drawing criticism from ocean advocates. French President Emmanuel Macron, the conference co-host, said he expects the treaty to enter into force by the end of 2025. Investment in ocean protection remains far below what's needed. Between 2015 and 2019, only $10 billion was committed globally, compared to the $175 billion required annually, according to the UN. In response, donors and financial institutions pledged €8.7 billion over 5 years during a weekend summit in Monaco. The UN also announced plans for a new global ocean finance facility to launch in 2028.
The European Commission has come under pressure after a German media outlet alleged it secretly funded environmental NGOs to push its own climate agenda. While Brussels denies any wrongdoing, concerns are being raised over transparency and lobbying.
The European Commission is rejecting claims made by Weltam Sonntag, which alleged that up to €700,000 was paid to green NGOs through secret contracts to support climate policies, including legal action against German coal plants and opposition to the EU-Mercosur trade deal. According to the report, organisations like Client Earth and Friends of the Earth were among the beneficiaries. The paper claimed the Commission sought to leverage NGO influence to raise pressure on German industries and sway internal EU trade negotiations. Brussels firmly denies these allegations. It insists all funding was allocated transparently under the EU's LIFE programme, a €5.4 billion environmental funding mechanism. The Commission says these grants were awarded through standard procedures and published on its financial transparency system. Still, the issue has stirred political controversy across the bloc. The European People's Party, the largest group in the European Parliament, says the Commission may have crossed a line by indirectly using NGOs to lobby lawmakers, raising concerns about institutional neutrality. In January, the EU's Budget Commissioner acknowledged that some activities funded under the EU's LIFE programme may have been inappropriate, specifically those that involved directing NGOs to lobby members of the European Parliament. Though not illegal, the admission added fuel to political criticism. The European Court of Auditors later described the funding process as opaque, warning that the lack of clarity exposed the Commission to reputational risk, even though it found no violations of EU law or values. In response, the Commission issued new guidance in 2024. These instructions prohibit the approval of NGO work programs that contain overly specific lobbying activities targeting EU institutions. Brussels has also promised further safeguards and closer cooperation with the European Parliament and auditors to ensure better oversight. Meanwhile, NGOs involved in the report defended their role. Client Earth clarified that EU funds were used only for operational support in its German office and not for legal expenses, pushing back against the claim that Brussels orchestrated court action. Friends of the Earth did not comment publicly.
To the Middle East now, Israel says it has uncovered a Hamas command center beneath a hospital in southern Gaza and claims to have killed the group's chief during a raid. A small group of foreign journalists embedded with the Israeli army were guided through what IDF claims is a tunnel complex under the European hospital in Khan Yunis. Gaza's media office rejected the claim, calling it false and fabricated.
Israeli forces have shown foreign journalists what they claim is a Hamas tunnel complex discovered beneath the European hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. Military convoys make their way through destroyed streets, passing scenes of devastation after months of fighting. Outside the hospital's emergency entrance, soldiers pointed to a deep hole, said to be the gateway to a command center used by Hamas fighters.
We are here in the city of Khan Yunis. This is the European hospital right behind me. The European hospital in Khan Yunis. You can see the very big hole in the ground right in front of it. This is the entrance we opened for a very big command and control compound, Hamas command and control compound. Yet this is another example of the cynical use of Hamas, using civilians as human shields, using civilian infrastructure, hospitals again and again.
Mohammed Sinwar was the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and of its armed wing, following the killing of his brother. He held both positions until he himself was killed by the Israel Defense Forces in May 2025. Footage from inside shows a narrow concrete passage with mattresses, clothing and belongings. This is what Israel claims were signs of an underground hideout. The Israeli army says the raid also uncovered weapons, cash and documents that are now being analysed for intelligence. The government media office in Gaza denied Israeli military claims that a tunnel was found beneath the European hospital in southern Gaza, saying the allegation was false and fabricated. The office accused Israeli forces of digging the site themselves and staging the footage. Speaking recently, Osama Hamdan, a Hamas official in exile, said that the group has not rejected the latest efforts by the USA to reach a full ceasefire. We confirmed that the movement did not reject the latest proposal of Witkoff, but we presented some comments and improvements to the proposal in order to ensure that this war ends. In a push to stop the militant group, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that the country has been arming opposition groups in the Gaza Strip.
We have operated clans in Gaza who oppose Hamas. What's wrong with that? It is only good. It only saves IDF soldiers' lives.
The latest claims and counterclaims underscore how deeply hospitals and civilian sites have become entangled in this war.
Ahead of the meeting of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, Tehran has warned of retaliatory measures against the UN nuclear watchdog if it passes its draft resolution on Iran, adding it will disclose documents related to Israel's nuclear program. Turash Relilu has more in Tehran.
On the eve of the meeting of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, in Vienna on Monday, Iran has warned of retaliatory measures against the UN watchdog and also said it will unveil secret nuclear files of Israel. Iran says it has prepared a list of measures, including lowering its cooperation with the IAEA if it passes a draft resolution on Tehran's nuclear program in its meetings this week. The spokesman of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Behruz Kamalvandi, said on the state TV on Sunday night that if an anti-Iran resolution is adopted, then certainly the IAEA should not expect the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue its broad and friendly cooperation. Kamalvandi said part of the measures will be technical and part of it will concern the nature of Iran's cooperation with the agency. The US, together with the European troika of France, Germany, and the UK, called E3, using the latest IAEA confidential quarterly report, intend to table a joint draft resolution blaming Iran of non-compliance. Dismissing the report as politically motivated and unbalanced, Iran reacted, saying it does not have any undeclared nuclear material or activity. Also, on the verge of the IA meeting in the Austrian capital, Iran's intelligence minister Ismail Khatib said on the state IRIB News TV on Sunday that Tehran will disclose the vast trove of strategic and sensitive documents it has obtained related to Israel's nuclear program. The Israeli government, which has adopted the strategic ambiguity policy about its military nuclear capability, has refused to comment on the news of the leaked documents so far. The local media in Israel, too, has yet to acknowledge significance of the documents, claiming that the Iranian minister's statements lack evidence. Khatib's statements came 2 weeks after Israeli authorities announced the arrest of 2 men on suspicion of committing security crimes on behalf of Iran. Turash Relilu, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
Following the Georgian government's decision to shut down the NATO and EU Info Center and absorb it into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, both the alliance and the EU reacted. Joining us from the Georgian capital to talk on the latest is George Mchadlishvili, Associate Professor at the European University in Tbilisi. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, NATO says it's concerned about the closure of the center, saying it comes at a time that the Georgian public needs more factual information on both the alliance and the country's Euro-Atlantic integration. The center has been operational for 2 decades. What do you make of the government's decision to shut it down? And would you say that it's a part of a broader set of tensions with the West?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important question. And we see that the ties between Tbilisi and the West have been soaring quite significantly over the last several years, and particularly intensely over the past several months. Following the announcement of the Prime Minister about the cessation of ties with the European Union on the issue of accession. And yes, of course, it is the reaction of Georgia on the perceived injustice which was exercised by the NATO Parliamentary Assembly when it reduced the authorities of the Georgian delegation. So when this seized the participation of Georgia on the Interparliamentary Council of Georgia-NATO, where Georgia has been like since 2008 after following the Russian aggression on Georgia. So we see that the ties have been strained, and there is like action and reaction. Every action which is perceived by the Georgian leadership as unjust and unjustified is retaliated in their mind by these institutional decisions, for instance, like closure of the NATO or cessation of these talks with the European Union and some other steps.
Well, Brussels has also responded to the closure of the center, condemning it as, quote, another step in the wrong direction. You've mentioned that the Georgian government has ceased its EU bid at least until 2028. How far is Tbilisi from Brussels right now? And do you see any possibility for mending ties?
Yes, the distance has been growing, and now it is dangerously big, in my opinion, and I believe that the ties should be mended. I think there should come the realization in these minds of European bureaucrats, I think in the first place, that the criticism of Georgia, which is often justified, but it should be limited to where it is due. There should be criticism which is far-fetched and which is not just. Similarly, when it comes to NATO, I believe that the steps had been like too drastic. Obviously, there is certain signs of Georgia actually kind of like loosening its tie and drifting away from the West, but I believe that the reaction should be more judicious, more, I would say, gradual, more piecemeal, and leaving the chance like to respond. There should be always the space. I feel, and it is really very, very unpleasant, that the space for reconciliation, space for diplomacy has been reducing dangerously thin.
Well, George, thank you so much for joining us and providing your opinion.
Thank you very much.
Over in Astana, Kazakhstan's and Bulgaria's presidents Kassym-Jomart Tokayev and Rumen Radev signed a memorandum to jointly develop the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. The route, also known as the Middle Corridor, aims to expand its reach into Europe through the Caspian Sea. The move is expected to boost trade between China, Central Asian countries, the South Caucasus, and Europe. The two sides also agreed to strengthen cultural, educational, and regional ties. Joining us from Astana to briefly talk on the visit and the memorandum Kazakhstan's and Bulgaria's presidents signed on the joint development of the Middle Corridor is Richard Spooner of the Washington-based Caspian Policy Center. Welcome, thank you for joining us. How significant would you say that Sofia enhancing its role on the Middle Corridor could prove to be with its Black Sea ports?
Of course, it's significant. Everything that contributes to the further development of the Middle Corridor is significant. We should keep in mind at the same time that the two ports that we're talking about, Varna and Burgas, have already been, if you will, part of the Middle Corridor in the sense that they're the second and third largest ports on the European side of the Black Sea that are receiving shipments that come through the Middle Corridor, with Constanta in Romania being the largest of those ports. The ports, for instance, in Kazakhstan, Kurik, Aktau, they're also being expanded. Their capacity is developing. So this is a similar kind of measure in order to improve efficiency along the corridor.
Where would you say this puts the alternative, the North Corridor that goes mainly through Russia? We know of all the restrictions and tightened measures since its full-scale invasion on Ukraine.
Yes, given the restrictions, which of course are very serious, this makes the Middle Corridor stronger. The commitment by Bulgaria is important. So we see capacity growing on the Middle Corridor, and the results of the visit in Astana today, the talks between the presidents of Bulgaria and Kazakhstan, will continue that.
Well, Kazakhstan also said it plans to supply Bulgaria with uranium. The details are not yet known. They are expected to be confidential anyways. But do you see this as a move by Bulgaria to diversify or outright replace its current Western suppliers of uranium?
I would think it's an effort to diversify. Unless there's something we don't know about problems with the supplies that come from Westinghouse or the other two Western companies that have been supplying Bulgaria since 2021. Before that, Bulgaria was receiving its materials pretty much strictly from Russia. Back in the day, Bulgaria used to mine its own uranium. I think this looks like a move to diversify. We'll see.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us and providing insight.
My pleasure.
And finally, in sports news, Azerbaijan's national Chovken team has become European champions for the first time. At a tournament held in Poland, the Azerbaijani team beat Malta 6-2 in the final.
Azerbaijan claims historic victory at European Chovken Championship. Azerbaijan's national Chovken team has claimed its first ever European Championship title, marking a significant achievement in the country's sporting history. The prestigious tournament, organized by the International Chovken Federation, took place in Poland. In the final match, Azerbaijan secured a commanding 6-2 victory over Malta. Chovken, a traditional Azerbaijani horseback sport involving players striking a ball with wooden mallets, continues to gain international recognition. The International Chovken Federation announced plans to expand the sport's reach with upcoming continental championships, the Asian Championship in Uzbekistan this September, the African Championship in Nigeria later that month, and the South American Championship in Buenos Aires in November. Azerbaijan's triumph is seen as a milestone in promoting and globalizing Chovken, further solidifying its status on the international stage.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and do stay tuned to AnewZ.